Greetings, Moody students, and welcome to BI 5528, Methods for Biblical Interpretation, your 7-week graduate course through Moody Bible Institute, Moody Distance Learning. My name is Dr. Greg Stevens, and I'll be your instructor for the 7 weeks of this course, and I'm really looking forward to facilitating your study of this topic. You can find my academic information listed in the Your Instructor section of the course shell, as well as my phone number, email, and office location and office hours. Please feel free to contact me at any time if you need to. It's always good first to send an email. I normally answer emails easily within 24 hours and usually much quicker than that. But if there arises an occasion over the course of the 7 weeks where you can't wait for an email response, you really need to talk to me, feel free to use my phone number and call me. I'm usually available. If not, leave a message and I'll get back to you just as soon as I can. While you're in the community post, too, keep in mind that this week, the first week, we need you to post there your class introduction as well. Now, there's probably some information there, the kinds of things we're looking for you to share, so please do that. And then if you would, either in your class introduction or maybe in a separate email if you're more comfortable doing that, please give me 2 good phone numbers where I can reach you, if possible, in priority order, and a non-Moody email, your personal email, if you would, where I can reach you. These are simply my way of backing up our communication if for some reason the Moody site crashes or any one of a number of other situations arise where we're not able to communicate through the Moody email system or the course shell on Blackboard. That rarely ever occurs, but it can, and I'm just trying to have an alternative backup system in place should that occur. Let me, again, officially welcome you to BI 5528 Methods of Biblical Interpretation. Let me encourage you, too, to look over the course shell, look over the course syllabus. I'm going to do that a little bit in this video with you, but take the time to really get it well acquainted with the course in this way by going over the course syllabus, maybe even the course schedule as well. They're there for you to download, and I encourage you to do so. Look those over carefully, be sure you understand what's there, and take time to look around the course shell. Anything you can download, I encourage you to download it and get it all organized on your personal computer as well. That's the first thing I do as a professor when I get into these courses. That way I make sure I've got everything on my own computer if I need it there for some reason. But get as familiar as you can with the syllabus, the schedule, the course shell, and this will help you tremendously as you move through the course. You might also want to take a few moments just simply to review some of those things each week as you log into the course. You've got the first week's work there all laid out, and it's usually laid out very similar to this, maybe in a fuller format in the each week in the course shell. But this week our objectives are 2. We want to review the major points of significance from within the history of interpretation, biblical interpretation. And we want to summarize various aspects of hermeneutics in the purposes of interpretation. Your reading includes information from both your textbooks. By the way, here is Klein's book, just so you know, you make sure you've got the right book that he's edited with others. And this week you're going to be reading pages 23 through 62, or 40 pages in Klein's book. Then here is the edited version with Van Hoosier as the lead editor. And you're going to read pages 15 through 62 of this book this week. So roughly 45 pages or so, 47 pages in that. So you've got a fair amount of reading this week, but about right for a graduate course. You've got 3 audio lectures to listen to. I'm sure those will be very interesting for you. I would encourage you to try to do some of the reading first. And that way I think the audio lectures will be even more stimulating for you. And then you've got 3 things to complete this week. I've already mentioned the class introduction. Again, read over any information there on the discussion board when you get there as to what we may be looking for you to share. Then the week 1 discussion, and I'll talk about discussion boards in just a moment. And then you've got the 1-1 Klein reference chart to fulfill. Now, all tasks each week must be done and turned in by Monday midnight. The course week for this course runs Tuesday morning at 12:01 a.m. through the following Monday, 11:59 p.m. So that's from midnight in the morning, Tuesday morning, through the following Monday midnight, obviously in the evening. So you've got a full 7 days with a weekend in the middle to be able to get your work done, and that's always proven to be very doable. The biggest thing is to plan your work and work your plan, and the self-discipline that's needed. I always tell students that's the benefit to online education, is you've got to be a bit more self-disciplined, so it builds that in your life, which is a lifelong benefit. On discussion boards, let me encourage you to always post your initial post, your response, your personal response to the discussion board question by Friday evening, by midnight Friday. That's basically giving you 5 days, 4 or 5 days to get through your reading and then respond to the discussion board. And that's your post. And it ought to be a minimum of 250 words. I think you'll find that'll be no problem to provide a substantive, thoughtful response to the discussion board question with at least 250 words. Most of you will have no problem with that, and you'll probably need to pull yourself back and not go on ad infinitum, if you would, with some of these topics. But give a good, substantive, thorough response to the discussion board questions when you post your initial response. Watch your grammar, watch your spelling, use the spell check function in Blackboard there to make sure your spelling is right, because all of that counts, of course. This is graduate school, so we want you to perform at that level. Also, if you cite sources in your discussions, and it's always appropriate to do so, cite them properly using the proper citation method of the course, whether that is MLA or Turabian. Double check, make sure you understand which form to use, and then make sure that you use inline citations if you're doing MLA or footnotes if you're doing Turabian, and make sure they're formatted properly. If you do cite sources, whether MLA or Turabian, you need to provide a bibliography at the end of your discussion board as well. So remember that. Also, once you've posted your initial response, remember by Friday evening of each week, then between Friday and Monday, you need to reply to at least 2 peers' posts. When you reply to a peer, I'm looking for 3 things, really. First, you reply to a peer, you want to provide some good compliments of things that they've said that you thought they've worded extremely well, or maybe an insight they've offered that you hadn't thought about, or some other aspect of their post you thought was particularly good. Be sure to compliment them on that. But don't stop there. Secondly, when you respond to a peer, provide some kind critique. When you're writing your initial post, or when you're reading your peers, we want you to use good critical thinking skills in doing so. So don't be afraid to challenge one another. If you disagree with something a peer said, in a kind way, indicate that and tell them why. And see if you can't stimulate some discussion or some thinking there. The third thing you need to do when you're responding to a peer is leave them with a good, thoughtful, relevant, open-ended question. That is a question they can't respond to with a simple yes or no, but a question they need to think about with regard to the topic that you're discussing in that discussion board. Whether it's in your initial post or in your replies to your peers, you need to look at the discussion board as a way to goad and prod and encourage one another's thoughtfulness on the topics of these discussions. Do these things and you'll do well in your discussion boards. Also, I wanted to touch on the syllabus. You might want to open that or come back to this video later when you've got it open. But let me just mention there, our course objectives are fourfold. First, we want to evaluate the impact of personal characteristics and sociocultural trends on biblical interpretation. I'm reading another book by Van Hooser right now for my PhD studies, and this is the very issue in that mix, is how do our own personal characteristics impact how we interpret the Bible? Just how objective are we in our study of the Bible? Then we want to employ a consistent hermeneutic in the interpretation of biblical texts of the various genres. That's right, the Bible is literature, and it represents at least 5 or more genres. And how does that impact biblical interpretation? We're going to learn about that as you go through the course. Then we want to construct theological themes from the biblical text. I'm just wrapping up a course in method for biblical theology with some at the undergraduate level at Moody. And there, that's the very thing those students are being taught to do, is how to construct theological themes biblically that is consistent with the biblical text. Well, we're going to touch on that in this course a little bit as well. And then we want to utilize various primary and secondary sources and incorporate these insights into one's interpretation of the biblical text. By the way, you ought not to be dependent on primary and secondary sources. Well, primary sources, yes. But secondary sources, you ought to be able to interact with at the graduate level. That is, again, use your critical thinking skills when you're reading secondary sources. And even the use of primary sources at times, as they bear on the biblical text. You want to be thinking according to the principles of critical thinking skills. Well, I've already mentioned your textbooks, the one that Klein is the lead editor on, along with Craig Bloomberg, Introduction to Biblical Interpretation. Again, that's this book. And then our second text is this one that I mentioned by Van Hooser and others, Everyday Theology. There are some PDFs in the course you'll be able to download, as well as some links, and you'll come on those each week as they're needed. You then have all the assignments laid out here with at least a brief or maybe extensive explanation. So you want to read down through those. All the discussion board questions are laid out there for you. So be sure to read those, or even ahead of time and be thinking a bit. Now again, when you get to the week of a particular discussion question, I'd try to do my reading for the week first if I could, before I did my discussion board. But being able to think ahead, even as things from one week to the next may impact topics that are going to be forthcoming. So it's just a good practice. You've got the assignments listed there for you. You've got the grading scale, some items there with regard to the library and the copyright statement. Let me also mention some things with regard to the course shell. I really encourage you to take some time to get as acquainted with the course shell as you can. You've got the instructor link is there as the first one in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. That'll give you, again, my academic information, my background, where I've studied. By the way, the first school I went to, its first president was a graduate of Moody. Just a little trivia there for you. Then you have the announcements. Each week I'll be adding an announcement. It will include, as this one, the text as well as the video. Most of the videos will be much shorter than this one. I'm sure that'll be a comfort to you. Course resources are listed then. Be sure to go through and download those as you need them. There's a discussion board rubric there, a project rubric, and a discussion rubric. So there's 2 different discussion rubrics there. So I'll look those over. Then you've got every week has a different link. Those are all laid out the same for you. I mentioned this in the text of the announcement as well, but these are all laid out in the same exact order to make it as simple as possible for students. You then got the community posts. The first of these is your class introductions, and then there's others there that you want to note, and then finally the discussion boards are all there, and this is where you'd link in to those. It may be set, and I hope it is, so that you can't see anyone else's initial responses to the discussion board until you've posted yours. And if perchance you can see theirs before you posted yours, I highly recommend that you not read your peers' responses until you've written yours. That's for your benefit and your educational benefit from the course, as well as for your peers. Following that, you've got ability to email course members and Moody policies. Be sure you click into that and get those downloaded and make sure you're familiar again with Moody policies for online education. Well, that I think pretty much covers it. Again, this is a much more lengthy video than most of them will be, I expect. But I just want to really encourage you. To me, biblical interpretation is the foundation to everything. I'm one who really enjoys Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. I love the biblical languages. But I would tell you that this kind of course, one dealing with the principles of sound biblical interpretation, even trumps the languages. That is, you need to know how to interpret the Bible in whatever language you're studying it. And those principles are cross-cultural. These are principles you need to understand and utilize to accurately handle the word of truth, 2 Timothy 2:15. And then, of course, from my perspective, the next thing I want to do is learn the biblical languages. But good hermeneutical practice, using the principles you're going to learn in this course, and using them with English Bible or whatever language is your mother tongue, is absolutely the most important thing you can do. Using these principles effectively, accurately, with any language Bible will help you to do extremely well, even if you never knew the biblical languages. But again, if you can, learn Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. God bless you. I look forward to working with you through the course.